Welcome to the BlackTrack, where I do commentary and review on movies with an all-black cast, or at least a black lead. Do you like the movie Die Hard? It's considered one of the greatest action movies ever made, so chances are you've at least heard of it. And it opened the door for today's movie, which is often described as Die Hard, but on a plane. If that sounds like the movie is being just a little bit discredited, just know that Passenger 57 was literally shopped around Hollywood as just that, Die Hard on a plane. However, the original storyline pitched was far away from what we eventually got. First intended to be a vehicle for Sylvester Stallone or a Clint Eastwood type, Passenger 57's original script told the story of a grieving father traveling to Spain to bury his recently deceased son, and on the way, the plane gets hijacked by Iranian terrorists, whose leader happens to be seated right next to our hero. Columbia Pictures was initially all over this concept, but ran into one small problem. The development phase of the movie coincided with heavy tensions in the Middle East related to the Gulf War, so the studio got cold feet and eventually washed their hands of their entire production, leading the way for Warner Brothers to pick up the rights. Unlike Columbia, Warner Brothers saw a way around pissing off Middle Easterners and hired two new screenwriters to not just completely rework the premise, but ultimately turn the film into a vehicle for a black star. That star being Wesley Snipes, who up until this point had mostly only done drama and a little comedy. Snipes has gone on record saying that he mostly prefers drama more than anything else, and Passenger 57 was an opportunity for him to combine his dramatic talents with his at the time underutilized skills in multiple combat disciplines, including jiu-jitsu, hapkido, and kickboxing. The movie even found a black director, choosing Kevin Hooks, who also directed Strictly Business, which I already talked about, and who starred in Aaron Loves Angela, a movie I talked about during a past Black History Month. With a black lead, a black director, and a derivative action plot, did Passenger 57 overcome the copycat curse and become a successful movie in its own right? Let's BlackTrack and find out. Hey, no diddy, but who's this strikingly handsome individual in this strikingly unrealistic surgery room? Turns out, this blue-eyed devil is psychopath Charles Rain, played by Bruce Payne, and apparently, he's here because according to this guy, he keeps changing his face to avoid capture for his crimes. This was during a time when Hollywood had us convinced that plastic surgery would completely alter your face to the point that nobody would know who you were. And even though that's complete nonsense, I'm still kinda bummed that we never get to see what Charles Rain looked like about 5 faces ago, or even what he was about to look like if this surgery was legit. Aside from this looking more like a spa than a surgery room, Rain is somewhat tipped off when the doctor keeps constantly looking at the clock, because where else do you have to be right now, except, dead. Rain makes a good run for it, but in the end, he's screwed by product placement. Goddamn Crystal Water, Hennessy would never. This movie wastes no time getting to the action too. We're already on the plane. And since when do brothers do hijackings? He's stopped by LaToya Jackson before he can even get to the cockpit, only to reveal it's actually a training center with a fake plane. It looks a whole hell of a lot more believable than that doctor's office. The woman in the scene is Marty, played by Alex Datcher. And yeah, not LaToya Jackson obviously. But you can't tell me she doesn't look like a long-lost Jackson sister. Hey, we know how Joe got down. If she does look familiar to you, it's probably because she was the woman who beat the pants off Martin in that one pool hall episode. The fake hijacker is John Cutter, played by Wesley Snipes, who's a former cop and Secret Service agent, and who doesn't have the patience for these type of antics. He tells Marty to never pull that type of carrying on ever again, and to just listen to whatever the guy with the gun has to say. And why would he say such a thing? Well, let's meditate on it and black and white track to happier days. See, before John became all disgruntled, he was a happily married man, but when an armed robber comes into a store that he and his wife were at to try to jack the place and takes his wife Lisa hostage, she's shot and killed when John in fact didn't listen to the guy with the gun. This is one of only 2 things that was kept from the original script, the fact that our hero is grieving a loss. Although in this case, it's not the motivation that gets our hero on the plane. In this Passenger 57, the motivation is clout, I guess. It's not money related because he clearly doesn't need it. Look at his ride and that suit. He aura farming like a motherfucker. It's not because he misses it either, because he fights with his friend Slidell Vecchio, played by the late Tom Sizemore, about not wanting to come back to the security sector. So I'm not sure exactly what it is that draws him back. Maybe boredom? Speaking of Sly Del Vecchio, they named him Sly as an inside joke to the fact that they originally wanted Sylvester Stallone to play the main character. I find it kind of interesting that the very next year, both Snipes and Stallone would star opposite each other in one of my favorite movies, Demolition Man. Does that movie count as having a black lead? I'll have to get back to you on that one. See, I'm not the only one. Charles Rane is a hot commodity. Granted, it's prison, so it's a low bar, but still, Charles Rane, an international terrorist, having an actual lawyer on retainer is funny to me for some reason. The lawyer doesn't even seem like he even wants the job, and for good reason. When he suggests an insanity plea, this happens.
Never mention my childhood.
This movie was released 1 year after Silence of the Lambs, and Charles Rane is like a mix of Hannibal Lecter and Hans Gruber from Die Hard. But even saying that, Rane is a compelling character in his own right, delivering his lines and behaving in a way that a real psychopath would. So the man did his homework. Insanity plea or not, Rane is gonna stand trial either way. And here's where the movie logic kinda goes off the rails a little bit. Because why would a dangerous, face-shifting, psychopathic terrorist be transported to stand trial on a commercial airline with only 2 FBI agents? That craziness aside, this leads to the second part of the original script that made it into this film. And that's the fact that Cutter and Rane end up on the same flight, although not sitting next to each other. You know who else is on this flight? Oh, Marty Marr, the flight attendant from the training exercise, who skips right over 57 during her count. In 2026, this movie probably would have been called Passenger 67, and she would have had good reason to skip over it. If you've ever wondered why such a random number like 57 was chosen in the first place, I'm sorry to disappoint you, because it's nowhere near as interesting as you might have thought. It's only because the writer of the film was at a restaurant and looked up and saw some Heinz 57 sitting on the shelf. See, maybe that's the problem with modern Hollywood. They're just trying too hard. The good stuff comes when you're not even trying at all. Hey, this lady looks a lot like Elizabeth Hurley. And that would be because it is Elizabeth Hurley, playing a flight attendant named Sabrina Ritchie in her first American feature-length film. And before somebody comes for me in the comments, yeah, I know she did TV shows and movies before this, but those were all foreign. This is her first fully American, non-TV show, full-length film. There's some turbulence on this flight, but not because of the plane. Marty is still butthurt about what happened at the training center, and she plans to make John Cutter's ride as bumpy as possible, even going as far as messing up his seating arrangements by sitting a little old lady right next to him, who for some reason seems to know him from somewhere.
I watch your show all the time.
My show?
Never miss it. Woo, woo, woo.
Her confusing him for Arsenio Hall is funny as hell, but you couldn't do that to somebody like me in real life who play too much, because I'd play along the entire time, maybe even take a picture. Insane in the brain Charles Rane has a fascination with time. Right before he killed the doctor in the beginning of the movie, he asked for the time, and when he asked for it here...
Do you know the time?
Why? You got someplace you gotta go?
How would you like your sirloin, sir?
Bloody.
Oops, looks like the editor added the wrong take, because this guy is bloody before he even gets shot. Hey, I understand. Ain't nobody got time to go back and reshoot all that. I never even noticed until the HD era. I guess Rane's lawyer is good for something, because who else could have sent word out to this highly organized group of goons to pull off this heist? Although, we all should have known something was afoot when we saw this guy. It seemed like this guy was always a henchman for a bad guy in the 90s. Mind you, I don't even know his name. And you know what? I don't even care to look it up. I like my movie henchman nameless. Mighty convenient that John Cutter went to the bathroom to escape the old lady just as the hijacking started. Actually, now that I think about it, that's kind of a miss on the terrorist part, especially Sabrina, because before this point, it seemed like her whole job was to scope out who was on the plane. And she was even told by Marty earlier that Cutter was a security specialist. So she gets an F for not accounting for seemingly the most important and the only black man on the plane. Oh no, there's another black guy right there. Well, the blackest man on the plane then. But then I guess if she did account for him, then he wouldn't have been able to make a phone call to Sly, and we the audience wouldn't have gotten a chance to see Cutter show off his hop keto, or as I like to call it when Wesley Snipes does it, his hip hop keto. Oh snap, looks like we got ourselves a Mexican standoff. Or at least it would be if Charles Rane gave a damn about anybody else but himself. He at first has Marty hostage, but sends her over to Sabrina so he can pick up poor Douglas here. He asks if Douglas has a kid, and back when I first saw this movie for the first time, I thought John Cutter was gonna pull off some miraculous rescue, or maybe Rane was gonna throw Douglas into John as a distraction, or something, but instead, we get unresolved trauma.
And she, until your interference, had a father.
I was a kid when I first saw this movie, and this scene terrified the hell out of me. Movies almost never, if ever, killed the hostages, so seeing this as a kid, no disrespect to Douglas, but it blew my mind. Well, I guess all bets are off. Marty and Cutter make a run for it and run into henchman number 4 down at the bottom of the plane. He plays it off real well at first, but he blew his cover way too fast for me. I mean, Cutter's back is turned. Why the f would you bring up Charles Rane's name to get his attention? Here's a hip-hop keto kick for your mistakes. Someone should make an edit where some rap music plays every time Cutter fights. I say with a straight face, like I can't just do that myself. Even in a real life situation, Marty is still fighting against John's plans. Like, girl, sit down somewhere. He wants to remove the fuel to force the plane to land, and it gets so bad that he accidentally calls her Lisa, which was his wife's name. So you can only imagine how much Lisa nagged him before she passed. The plan works, which triggers a call from Charles Rane, and what I'm sure is extra rare props from the Psycho for coming up with that fuel plan. This leads to the film's most famous line.
Charlie, you ever play roulette?
On occasion.
Well, let me give you a word of advice. Always bet on black.
Apparently, that phrase was originated by this movie, and I'm not ashamed to say that I did not realize that. I always just assumed that it was something said by black gamblers long before this movie came out, but nope, Passenger 57 is the originator, and the phrase blew up because of this movie. That's pretty cool.
Hey man, let me give you a hand.
Damn, didn't get all of that. You know, you really don't realize how dumb movie goons are until you get older. But how close does this man have to get a good shot? They right there. Cutter's big plan is to jump off the plane when it comes to a stop. And I would have loved to see Marty do that in heels. But unfortunately, we don't get that visual when goon number 2 attacks and knocks Cutter out of the plane prematurely. And get this, originally, the studio wanted to have the stuntmen do all the action parts of the movie for safety and insurance reasons, but Wesley Snipes fought against that and insisted on doing them himself so that it wouldn't look like a different person and they could get close camera shots. So this crazy stunt of Cutter rolling on the runway is actually Wesley Snipes and not another brother in a bad wig. It's at this point that I think Passenger 57 kind of drops the ball. The setting is moved from the plane to this little country podunk Louisiana town with stereotypical small town cops and a carnival? This was the trade-off for not being able to do the Iran hostage situation in the original script. Supposedly, Kevin Hooks was trying to do some kind of commentary on race in small towns like this, but it doesn't really come through on the screen for me like it was intended. For one thing, they don't arrest Cutter on the runway because he's black. They arrest him because they think he's one of the people who flew the plane. Then to make it worse, Charles Rane calls the chief sheriff and claims Cutter as one of the terrorists. So at no point does Cutter's race come into the picture, other than the occasional times they call him boy. Plus, these cops are just goofy caricatures, highlighted by the exaggerated and fake country black accent by the chief.
He's headed toward the fairground. You want us to head out there?
Well, why is that, Luther? So you can get some more practice whooping your dumb ass?
By the way, the chief is played by Ernie Lively, the father of actress Blake Lively. Essentially, what I'm trying to get at with this small town diversion is, imagine if during Die Hard, John McClane all of a sudden decides to leave the Nakatomi building to do a side quest at the local Marriott. It would take you completely out of the movie because the setting, that being the building, is a character in itself. In Passenger 57, the plane is kind of a character, and if you take Passenger 57 out of the plane, is it even a passenger anymore? The answer to why this detour was needed may lie in the way the movie was shot. The exterior shots of the plane taking off and sitting on the tarmac were shot using the legit aircraft just painted for the movie. But for all the interior shots, they had to come up with a way to fit all the actors into the shot along with all the equipment, which was impossible in the actual plane. So they constructed a fake set to make it look like 3 different sections of the interior of the plane that could be disassembled at any time based on which side of the plane they wanted to shoot. Because of this, all the plane shots had to be filmed in chronological order, which almost never happens in filmmaking, so that the gradual destruction of the plane would make sense. So given the restrictions of the shooting on the plane set, I can kinda see why they decided to divert some of the action to the small town and carnival setting. It doesn't mean I have to like it though. I still think they could have came up with something better, but at least it didn't stop these fists from flying.
Wesley on the pivot, let the blade spin, redirect the pressure, let the light in, half needle leverage, snap the frame, hold fast, gritty with the flow, making every...
Ho ho ho, y'all in trouble now. Trouble Man himself done made an appearance. This is FBI Agent Henderson, played by Robert Hooks, the father of director Kevin Hooks. He finally convinces these yokels that Cutter is an important man, and right around this same time, Cutter manages to actually apprehend Rain at the carnival. So you would think the movie would end right here, right? Thankfully no, because that would be terribly anticlimactic. Following an intense interrogation/negotiation, Rain successfully bargains with Cutter and the FBI to let him back on the plane in exchange for the hostages. In reality, they had planned to shoot Rain before he got back on the plane, but I wonder how that would have worked with the rest of the terrorists when they saw their leader go down. Wouldn't they have just shot everybody? Semantics aside, we'll never know, because Rain is always 14 steps ahead, and henchman number 4 already took out the sniper and shoots another agent while he's at it, while Rain runs back on the plane. Back on the plane, all this action got Charlie Boy all hot and bothered. All of a sudden, he's ready to take a walk on the wild side with old Marty Marr. I had done forgot all about Marty. See, that's another problem with taking the action off the plane. Her importance in this movie took a massive backseat when that happened. It could be said though, that we really didn't come to see Marty. We came to see John Cutter kick ass, and after another equally impressive stunt to get back on the plane, he channels his inner James Bond.
Who are you? Cutter. John Cutter.
He convinces the pilots to turn the plane back around, but old Charlie don't like that. And it's finally time for the showdown. And call me crazy, but Charlie Boy holding his own against John Cutter. I like how Rain is fighting for his life, but never breaks character. His face never changes, not even when he's nut-checked. Crazy to the end. Originally, this scene was supposed to be shot almost completely with stunt doubles, but Snipes, Payne, and Kevin Hooks all fought to have it shot practically so that they could zoom in on the actors' faces and make it more realistic. When it's all said and done, Cutter finally puts an end to Rain, like all heroes do, by tossing the villain out of something, in this case, the plane. And Cutter missed the perfect opportunity to say something about making it rain. But then I remembered, this is 1992, and that terminology hasn't been invented yet. Instead, the movie calls back to an earlier joke that's kinda equally as funny. But wait a second, so Sabrina was the only terrorist to survive? Girl, they gonna throw the book at you, and you barely did anything. Who am I kidding? They'll take one look at her, give her 8 months probation and community service. Let's get to the grade. Despite a lot working against it, Passenger 57 ended up being a gamble that paid off for Warner Brothers. They bet on black, and because of that, the film debuted at #1 at the box office and almost tripled its budget, bringing in $44 million just in the US and another $22 million overseas. This all happened despite another funny coincidence. When Sylvester Stallone and other actors couldn't do the film, the studio reached out to Steven Seagal, who also turned it down because he was attached to a little film called Under Siege, which released 1 month prior to Passenger 57. Well, Passenger 57 dethroned that film from the #1 spot, proving that a black-led martial arts action film could be just as good as a traditional action film. I think Passenger 57 is a really, really good film. The short runtime does a lot of heavy lifting because it moves at a quick pace and nothing drags, but it also ends up being a curse because there was no time to flesh out some of the characters or craft a stronger story around the main leads. The small town detour and complete disregard of every character on the plane around that time really derails the film, and it's always been my least favorite part of the movie even to this day. But Wesley Snipes is so entertaining and magnetic that it still works. Bruce Payne also carries a lot on his back by giving us a terrifying villain that was so convincing that people who know a whole lot more about this stuff than I do commended the movie on presenting a true-to-life image of a psychopath. The success of the movie propelled Wesley Snipes into superstardom and opened the door for more action roles in the following years, with the biggest and probably most important being the Blade trilogy. And it's all thanks to Passenger 57. And because it's a black-led action film with a black director that Lord knows we need more of these days, it's always going to be a personal favorite movie of mine, despite its flaws. My grade for Passenger 57 is a C+. It might not be as long as most action films, but it's definitely just as strong. And that's it for another episode of the BlackTrack. Let me know what you thought about the movie Passenger 57 in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and tell your friends about my channel. And until next time, I'll holla at you.